Camera there? All right. So I've got you from where you're at to about so I'll stand like this out here.
Well, good morning, everyone. Why don't we take a seat? Let's get started. Good morning, Chris. Good morning. Yay. Just like herding cats. Oh, wait, that's on camera. All right, well, good to see everyone. Happy New Year. Welcome to 2020. Yay. Funny, when I think of 2020, I'm thinking about Y2K for some reason. You're like, we're listeners at that time. We're worried, the world would stop spinning, right? So, unfortunately that didn't happen, but partly that's 20 years ago. Anyway, I'm excited about 2020. Today's a special day, right? Legislature, we're all excited. Yay, another lap around the track. And the countdown to sine die, right? That should be a state holiday. Well, it's great to see a full house. I know a lot of people logged in too. Hopefully tech is working great today so far. I'm seeing the thumbs up, so many people are tuned in outside of this room, so glad to have you here. My name is Paul Tyler. I'm your president this year, also superintendent out on Mountain Unified, and want to get started. We have a full agenda, lots of important guests here, good information. And so first, our sponsor for breakfast was Scholastic, so come on up. You guys want to say anything?
We're going to present, so
good to go?
He's on the agenda.
Okay. All right. No, that's fine. Good?
just for the presentation.
Mark says so, yes.
Okay. Thank you. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
I was listening to some of you say, wow, it's really cold here. Come to New York for a little bit. It feels really great. I just, when I stepped outside, I was like, this is very refreshing. Can we hear?
Yeah.
Are we on? Good.
Yeah.
We have just a brief few moments with you all. So I wanted to make sure you saw what's on your tables. Nicole and I passed out a little earlier. Does everyone know Nicole? Nicole, raise your hand back there. Nicole Koopsar. On your tables, you should have this red form here. This is going to be really important. I'll say about that in a minute. And then who Nicole is and her card. And then, since we're going to go through this pretty fast, we gave you some information around summer learning, a white paper, and then an infographic that you can use back in your district. I'll refer to that in a little bit. So this red card here, this one here with the Scholastic bar at the bottom, if you fill those out, we're going to collect those, and Nicole is going to give away something to whomever we pull. Nicole, what are you going to give someone? She's going to give a classroom set of take-home text. So that's for summer reading. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. A classroom set. Somebody's going to get 30 of those for an entire classroom when we pull those names from those cards, okay? So I'm just going to jump right into it. When we talk about comprehensive literacy, I had an opportunity to work with a couple of states that are around this area, and we're talking about just that pivotal point for where students learning. And we understand that if children don't receive those critical foundation skills by third grade, what happens? We know what happens. So looking at the state data and where our students are, we also understand that it's important that we give them those foundation skills. Oftentimes when we talk about summer, we just concentrate on summer, but I want to share that it's important to make sure students have access to authentic text throughout the entire year. I call it Literacy 365. When they have authentic text throughout their entire year, and when I say authentic text, that's that text that's put together, that's not written to teach a skill, but authentic books for students to read all year long. And this some data shows that they retain those skills. Unfortunately, when we look at the literacy block, and most of our elementary schools, usually it's 90 minutes, sometimes 120 minutes, we only have about 12 minutes of independent reading. And so with that, we understand that we need to make time for students to make sure that they're reading outside of the independent reading time. This is not coming out as clear as I would like, but If we look at the number of minutes that students are reading, in order to be in that 98th percentile, you need at least almost 70 minutes per day. Well, if you're only reading about 12 minutes in your independent literacy block, that means you should be reading at home. That means you should be reading in other classrooms. So that time is critical in order to decrease that student achievement. Krashen says this very clearly to me. He points out that regardless of your social economic status, regardless of where you are in the community or in rural or urban or in the city, suburban, independent reading is the greatest factor to student achievement. So that's why I talk about it's critical that students are reading all year and not just summer, when we want what I'm going to talk to you about in a minute. I have this recommendation for classroom libraries in order for students to read. We found studies have shown that when students select the books themselves, they tend to finish reading it. So you need to have robust libraries. And if you like any of these slides, you can put that on your card. Nicole can get you these slides as well. You can use this for your data. So I want you to take a look at these 3 questions. Do all your students have access to text in their homes? Do they have access to text year-round? Do they have access to quality programming? If the answer is no, there's an equity gap. And remember, Krashen talks about in order to have increased student achievement, you need to have access to independent reading. So the summer slide. It accounts for about 85% where students don't retain the information. Teachers do all this work all year long. The summer comes, they're not receiving text anymore. They go back to school in the fall, the teacher has to reteach, catch them back up. Well, there's things you can do to prevent that. This is a video we want to start. I want you guys to take a look at this 2-minute video.
2 children, one from a middle-income family, the other from one of the millions of low-income American families. As the 2 kids head off to kindergarten, look what happens. The middle-income child starts out with a 6-month lead. The low-income child is already falling behind because of a lack of access to early reading and preschool education. During their year in kindergarten, in the same school and classroom, the 2 children will learn at about the same rate, so we'll move them both forward 9 months. But look what happens in that first summer between kindergarten and 1st grade. Our middle-income child moves ahead about a month in reading because learning of one kind or another continues over the summer. The low-income child falls back about 2 months. So when school begins again, when they go back for 1st grade, the gap between them has already widened. During 1st grade, again, they move ahead at about the same rate, another 9 months. That next summer, the activities and lifestyle of the middle-income family keep that child moving forward. But the low-income child has fewer opportunities to reinforce good habits like reading, and that child falls farther behind. Then we come to 2nd grade, and again, our 2 children learn at the same rate. But the summer after 2nd grade sets our low-income child back again, and our middle-income child moves forward again, and the gap widens again. By just the 3rd grade, the 2 children are already far apart. By the end of 5th grade, the gap between the children is 2.5 to 3 years. It will keep growing through middle school. So you see, without addressing what's happening during the summer, it is impossible to ever catch up. It's impossible to close the gap. No matter how much high-quality learning goes on from September to June, every year the gap widens.
Okay, many of you have seen this video before. And so the point of it is oftentimes we forget about this, and I was showing that data, if students don't receive this critical information by 3rd grade, they start to fall behind even more. But I think it's critical that students read all year. The independent reading all year long needs to take place. So we put it to the test. I have the pleasure of running research and validation for Scholastic. So we sent a team out to do some work. We saw what Kim said. Dr. Kim says that, note that 4th grade students who read 5 to 8 books over the summer gain 80 lexiles, while students who didn't read any lost 50 lexiles. So we wanted to look at this work. We wanted to see what happens when they do read. He's saying that by parents resulted in 1.7 to 5.1 months of additional learning. we wanted to put this to the test. On your tables, you have the actual research that was done. We went to Greenville, South Carolina. We worked with the school system there and a partner, public education partners. We gave every student 10 books to take home for the summer. And what we did was, we did throughout the year, we had what was called literacy events. We have the students and their families come in to talk about what does it mean to bring a book home, so they can know the value of once they got that book home. We did this throughout the year. So towards the end of the year, we had all the books laid out on tables. Students knew what their reading levels were, they knew what to look for, and they went to pick their own 10 books. And remember what I said, data shows that when students pick their own books, they tend to finish. So here's what we found. When students picked their own books, remember we only gave them 10, we found on average that they read almost 15 books over the summer. And in doing the research, when I did focus groups with the students, I said, well, we only gave you 10 books. How did you read all 15? They read their books, they treated with themselves, and they read on average 15 books. The results were so powerful that our partners, public education partners, they wanted to do the research for a second year. And they gave the students 10 more books. So think about this. If you have a family of 3, you got 10 books the first year, that's 30 books. You get 10 books the next year, now you have 60 books. Now they're building in-home libraries. Now they're having this resources throughout the year. So we noticed that they read the same amount of books. What was more incredible was, of the 3rd to 5th graders, 78% of the students maintained or increased their skills when they started school back in the fall. And that was the powerful thing about this research. Well, we also talked to the parents, and we wanted to know, and we talked to the teachers, what was the stamina of the students? Because they had to take these standardized tests. Well, the reading stamina of those students reading an hour or more doubled, from 13% to 20%, 26% in the first year. The second year, that's almost doubled again. And then we talked to the parents about, so those family events that you came out to, do you think they were beneficial? We never get 100%. 100% of the family members said yes. We thought it was great you brought us in and talked to us about the value of books coming home. What does it mean to have your child have some alone time? But we had families that said, well, I don't read or speak in English. So how do I help my child? So we talked to them about, so ask your child, what's the book about? Who's your favorite character? How do you think the story is going to end? Did it end the way you wanted it to? If you could change the ending, what would you change it to? These are all questions, higher order thinking questions that we taught our family members to do, even if they didn't speak English. You can get the full report here, but we also gave you, Nicole, we had that here. We also gave that to you here, the full report of this. I find it fascinating. Greenville, South Carolina now took over, and they provide all 85,000 of their students summer learning packs to take home because of the results that they've received. And now they're one of the fastest growing districts in student achievement in the state. Here's what I want you to think about. When you get back to your districts, what can you do? I recommend you look at your classrooms, libraries as they currently are. Oftentimes, when I was superintendent, I moved my teachers from one classroom to the other. What did they do with their books? They took them with them. So I will do my learning walks. I would go into the 4th grade class and say, oh, the classroom library is all full. But that teacher used to teach 3rd grade or 2nd grade. She brought her books with her. So it may not be their appropriate book. So I recommend doing classroom surveys. I also recommend talking to your students to find out their interests. Okay, and then you can think about other ways that you want to support this. If you need more support on what this can look like, again, we have the cards for you to fill out. Nicole can be there to support you on that. I'm obsessed around the country to make sure that students have access to text all year long. And I'm hoping you can be a part of that to watch Arizona grow in this achievement. I hope I stuck to my time. And thank you for your time. And remember to fill out this form here. And we're going to pull one of these and we're going to give away a summer reading pack to somebody. Thank you guys for your time.
Thank you, appreciate that. Moving right along on our agenda, we're pleased to have the Executive Director for the State Board of Education, Ms. Alicia Williams, next. Come on up, Alicia.
For those of you who don't know me, my name is Alicia Williams. I'm the Executive Director of the State Board. Most of you are familiar with Measure. He's my deputy director. And he told me it was time that all of you saw my face, so that's why I am here. And just a little tidbit of information, Mr. Paul Ty, Y2K, I was in 8th grade, and I specifically remember my mom taking us to the grocery store because for some reason everyone was getting water. You're welcome. Couple things, I think I have like 5 or 10 minutes. Selfishly, there are 9 superintendents coming to my background lunch tomorrow, so if you are not one of those 9 and would like to come, I did make brownies and apple cake for you. But that is held at our offices in the executive tower between the hours of noon and 2. Bring your lunch, and then we just kind of chit and chat. It's a little bit more of a open, free-flowing discussion, not a structured. Couple things I know Mark put up here. We do have a survey that's open in regard to the accountability systems for K-8 and 9-12. If you recall at the December board meeting, the board looked at some potential changes. One is inputting back SGP, student growth percentiles, into high school accountability. And that was an ask from the board for last year when we had the menu issue and we couldn't show growth between easy merit and the menu options. The second is the removal of, or not removal, we had to figure out what to do with 8th grade math acceleration readiness indicator because we no longer have the end of course assessments for Algebra 1. So there's some options for that. Lastly, for both models, we had special education, potentially lowering that threshold to receive the bonus points to 60% from 80%. So there's some modeling and some questions that are asked around special education bonuses as well. Some other areas of discussion. The board at its January board meeting will be looking at an AOI accountability model, Arizona Online Instruction. The board initially talked about AOIs about 2 years ago. We left off at having the same traditional model, but changing the definition of FAE for our online schools. What we plan on doing, if the board approves the concept of the AOI, is just use this year as a data collection because we haven't collected that data before, really study the data, and then have an accountability system go into effect for next school year. My goal is for the board to approve all the changes to the accountability system in January so that we have an accountability system for 2 years. And then we don't have to keep changing it. We will have a new statewide assessment in 2021. That RFP went out on December 31st. I do need people to serve on an evaluation committee for the new statewide assessments. I'm sure we'll invite Mark. Mark was on the last one. But besides data people, I would really like to have some practitioners. Sometimes the data people are really great at data and evaluation, but we forget about the little things that we need to also be aware of. So if you have anyone in your schools, they're like, this is a great person, please email me so that I'm aware of that individual. And also note that it will be a couple full days that they'll be out of the classroom or out of the school if they're an administrator or out of the district office. If you do not have my email, I'm going to leave cards with Mark. The State Board of Education is running 2 bills this year. Typically, we support bills. We usually don't run our own, but we're running 2 this year. They are mirror bills, so they will start in the House and the Senate simultaneously. It all revolves around educator discipline, which I know Ketcher has talked to you guys about before. The numbers, if you're interested in knowing and reading more, it's Senate Bill 1048, then House Bill 2110. Senate Bill 1048 is sponsored by Kate Brumfield-McGee, and 2110 is sponsored by Representative Udall. I should have said Senator Kate Brumfield-McGee. I apologize. Lastly, in August, the State Board of Education asked staff to figure out how we can travel the state. so that other areas of the state are able to access the board. So for the first time in 11 years, we will be having a regular board meeting outside of Maricopa County. We'll be having that in Yuma in January, just upcoming weeks. I did ask Mark earlier, but there's no one here from Yuma Elementary. We are recognizing Yuma Elementary District for the work they've been doing with Read On Arizona and the Department of Education in their case studies for early literacy. It's something that we've been working with Terry Clark with Read On and Sean Ross from the department on how to recognize schools that are doing great work in early literacy and really celebrating that. So we do plan having a celebration moment at our board meeting in January. Any questions? I just love this group, so there's never any questions. Okay, well, thank you. I will leave my cards with Mark if you know. Oh, one last thing. I need a principal to serve on the Professional Practice Advisory Committee. So if you know a principal who can give up a Tuesday and a Wednesday every other month, I need a principal. This committee oversees educator discipline cases. If anyone else wants to know about what goes into feedback, talk to Melissa Sadorf. She's one of my superintendent representatives. Or talk to Mark. Apparently Mark did it. Okay, thank you very much. And hopefully I'll see you tomorrow.
Well, thanks, Alicia. Appreciate having you here and the great communication and partnership with the state board. So moving right along, next on our agenda, we have Erin Cruz from NAU about the Arizona Foster Grandparent and RSVP programs. Come on up, Erin.
Hi, thank you. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So nice to be here with you today. My name is Erin Cruz. As Paul said, I'm with the NAU Civic Service Institute and specifically here today to talk to you about the Foster Grandparent Program. Although we have a whole variety of programs that you may be interested in. So I've left our brochure and a flyer about one of our AmeriCorps programs that's a different conversation. I'm here with Hope Clapp. She's under the weather. She's our program coordinator here in Maricopa County. So she's going to be our behind the scenes tech support today. So as you can, the next slide. Yes. So Hope and I, we put our high schools up there just to let you know we are both proud graduates of the Arizona public school system and are really proud that our work on a day-to-day basis goes into supporting Arizona students throughout the state. So I want to start with a question for you all. What experiences do you have engaging volunteers in your classrooms or your schools? What worked in those experiences, and perhaps maybe you didn't have some great experiences, so what were some of the challenges? Just think about those things because I'm hoping that I touched on both the wins and the challenges throughout the presentation today. Oh, the video. So the next thing we're going to show, while it's pulling up, how many of you have heard or have the foster grandparent program in your school? One lone hand. I bet there's more of you. You might not even know it. Yeah, go ahead. This is
across the state work to do more with less. More than 100 teachers are getting some much needed help from foster grandparents.
New for you this morning, our Danielle learner is showing us the impact this is having on kids and volunteers.
Okay. In the sea of first graders at Catalina Ventura Elementary School in Phoenix.
This looks interesting.
You'll find Miss Jane.
Okay, ready?
She always has a smile on her face. Sometimes he reminds us to be quiet.
Truth is, Jane Turner will do just about anything to encourage and support these students.
18, 20 hours a week.
And she's been doing it as a foster grandparent for the past 4 years.
It encourages me to get up in the morning and come to school and see their smiling faces when I open the door and know that I'm appreciated.
Teachers like Callie Crone appreciate it too.
boy, they miss her when she's not here. Wednesdays are a sad day for us.
In her 25 years of teaching, Crum says meeting the growing needs of her students is tougher than ever.
I can serve twice as many students having an extra adult in my room.
NAU Civic Service Institute runs the foster grandparent program with 120 volunteers across the state. 22 of them are in Maricopa County, but there's room for at least 20 more.
Do you feel like you're learning from her and the students as much as they might be learning from you?
Yes, especially the math. That can be challenging.
No teaching expertise required, just the desire to serve.
Why not invest in the future of this future generation and try to help them overcome some of the things that they need and help the teachers be a helping hand to them?
In Phoenix, Danielle Lerner, ABC 15.
Great. So that just gives you, can you hear me? Okay. That just gives you a little snip of what the foster grandparent program is. If you heard foster and thought people taking volunteer or students into their homes, that's not what the program is. Always have to overcome our name a little bit. This is a school based program for older adult volunteers who want to help students be successful. So we're part of Senior Corps. There's 3 Senior Corps programs. They're federally funded for volunteers 55 and better. And if you're 55 and older, don't worry, you don't have to consider yourself a senior, but they're great programs. And there's more than 220,000 volunteers across the country that come together to do this work collectively. There's a dual purpose. It's to get those volunteers out into the community so that their gifts and talents are utilized and they're meeting a critical community need while having a positive experience themselves. So the goals of the foster grandparent program are twofold. Oh, did I hit the wrong button? The goals of the program are twofold. It's to support students in being successful in meeting social, educational, behavioral, developmental goals. And our volunteers do that by going into a classroom. They're matched with one teacher, sometimes multiple teachers depending on the school setting. And those teachers assign specific students to work with those volunteers day in and day out. You heard Jane say she volunteers about 18 to 20 hours a week. That's our average. So the volunteers become a really embedded part of that classroom, and the teachers and the students rely on them. So while they're working with those students that they're assigned to, whether one-on-one or in small groups, that frees up their teacher to then work with other students. So the assigned students are benefiting, those other students who the teacher now has time to work with are benefiting. And we've recently begun asking our teachers, how many other students in the classroom benefit from having a foster grandparent beyond those 5 or 6 that they're working with regularly? And most of them say all of the students benefit. So there's this huge impact on all of the students, whether or not they're getting one-on-one interventions, because the volunteers are role modeling good behavior and being a trusted adult that they can talk to. The teachers also love having a volunteer in the classroom because it's an extra set of eyes and ears for them. The other piece is the volunteer engagement. So all of our volunteers in the foster grandparent program are low income. So in addition to giving up their time, they get a few benefits. They receive a small hourly stipend. Nobody's getting rich off of our program, but it's $2.65 an hour. And they get mileage reimbursement as well as training and other support that we offer. So you may be wondering what the volunteers can and can't do in the classroom. So we are a federally funded, regulated program. So you can imagine there's a lot of stipulations around the volunteer engagement. So volunteers are tutors, mentors, role models, and friends. And if you take nothing else away from the rest of this slide, what I want you to know is that it's student-centered and teacher-directed. The teachers are supervising the volunteer and providing them with exactly what their expectations are for the engagement with the students. The volunteers are, they're there to help with academic support, but they are also there to help with social support, emotional support, be someone to listen to them when they have a problem. We have a volunteer who said, I always saw this kid running up and down the halls with his shoes untied in 5th grade. And he finally stopped him and said, dude, you gotta tie your shoes. He said, I don't know how. So he sat down and just worked with that young man till he could tie his shoes. So, something so simple as that made a big difference. Volunteers aren't aides. They aren't specially trained in special ed or for students necessarily with IEPs, but, and they're not there to do paperwork. So there might be an occasional test that they grade or something like that, but they're very student focused. Really important, volunteers don't discipline students. That is the teacher's job. They can be there to do gentle corrections, but they are there at the teacher's behest and at their pleasure. The other big piece is that our volunteers always have to have line of sight supervision, so they're not to be left alone in managing the classroom while the teacher sits up for whatever she or he needs to do. And maybe wondering about the numbers. So last year in our K-12 classrooms, primarily K through third, if a volunteer wants to serve with older students, middle school, high school, upper elementary, we are very happy to make that match. Most of them want to be with the younger students, and most of our schools say we need that early literacy intervention in K through third, so that's where they focus. But last year we served 540 students, and teachers reported that 97% of the students demonstrated outcomes in academic engagement. This year we're switching to academic performance as our metric, so this will be a little bit of a change. The teacher gets to decide as she or he reports how they're measuring academic performance, grades, observation tests, whatever they choose to make that determination for us. We also have quite a few volunteers serving in Head Start classrooms. And so if that's something that you are engaged with, I don't want to leave out the early childhood piece. We serve 91 students, and coincidentally, 97% of them also demonstrated gains in social development. Teachers have overwhelmingly positive response to the volunteers in their classroom and what that the impact has both on them. So that volunteers are flexible, accept direction, engage appropriately with the students, and really add to the setting. And then overall, volunteers have very, very positive experience. And I think the key thing to take away from this is kind of the positive feedback loop that happens. Volunteers have a great experience. They connect with the child. That child, the light bulb goes on, it makes the volunteer feel good. They go home, they invest a little bit more. I'm gonna go out and buy some pencils now, buy some stickers, and they buy some things or invest in something to give to their students. The students appreciate that, and it starts to become the student works a little bit harder. Volunteer gets more satisfaction, and so they just really feed off of each other in a really positive way. And so, how does this program work? We partner with primarily with school districts. We have 58 memorandum of understanding agreements throughout the state of Arizona. We love having agreements with districts so that when a volunteer comes to us from a specific community, we have the flexibility to place them in any school within that district. But we do have agreements with individual schools in some cases, Head Start programs, and nonprofits that serve students like Boys and Girls Club, places like that.
How many hours?
What's that?
I didn't know if you want to talk about hours.
So where we are, our grant is for the state of Arizona with the exception of the Navajo Nation, which has its own very robust foster grandparent program. All the cities that are listed here are places where we have volunteers serving, and the cities in blue are where we have staff located. So we can provide programming in places where we don't have staff, but the volunteer needs to be able to get to them in a reasonable driving distance to be able to access the training that we offer. Our goal is to have 160 volunteers. We have about 120 right now, so we're looking for 40 new volunteers across the state to help support our students. Importantly, I know you're probably wondering what we do for background screening. That safety of the children is top of mind and the most important factor in our program. And so we are required to do extensive background checks for our federal grants that include an NSOPW check, the state repository check, FBI fingerprint check, and it covers a wide variety of topics about our program and about working with students specifically, tutoring, confidentiality, communication, boundaries, all of those things. We do monthly in-service trainings with our volunteers so that we have a lot of contact with them and making sure that they're continually getting educated and a lot of support throughout their time. What we provide to you is a program orientation for your staff and teachers, anybody that might be working with a volunteer. A great handbook with lots of useful tips. Help in addressing any issues that might arise. I know for those of you that might be thinking of a volunteer experience that you have that maybe didn't go so well, some of the communication or miscommunication that can happen, we can help address that. And if a volunteer isn't a good fit, find them a better fit. So, best part, there's no charge for being a foster grandparent site. You get the benefit of these volunteers in your classrooms. The investment that's required is that you invest in them as a person that's wanting to contribute to your school community, making them feel welcome, giving them the resources that they need to be successful in whatever your school community operates. We signed the memorandum of understanding. We expect that you provide orientation, and like I said, bring them on board, make them feel valued, create a sense of success for them so they can offer that to your students. And there's minimal paperwork. So there's 3 pieces of paper that teachers touch throughout the year. It's very easy to fill out, and then they sign up on the volunteers timesheets once a month. So we make it as easy and as stress-free as possible, burden-free as possible for the teachers. Here's a quick testimonial from one of our volunteers in Sedona. And I think the things just to take away that she says what the students have got is this extra time with a one-on-one time with an adult who's helped them in a variety of ways, and that it's been invaluable to her and her students. So we hope that this piqued your interest and that you want to learn more about our program. Hope and I will stick around for a little while if you have a break and want to chat, but you have my card, you have our contact information. The rest of our staff contact information on the state is in the slide deck, and we really look forward to working with you. Thank you so much for your time.
Well, thanks, Erin. That sounds great, and federally funded and minimal paperwork. Don't hear
I
that.
know. We have lots of paperwork, but you don't.
All right, so you're doing all the paperwork. It still exists. Well, it sounds great. Anyways, moving right along, we have Dr. Chris Bosworth here from the U of A talking about school safety plans. So come on up.
They're down.
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for including us. I'm joined by Sarah Johnson, Elizabeth Johnson from ASU, so we have all 3 universities represented within 20 minutes in terms of exciting kinds of things. So we represent a very loose group of researchers and practitioners in the state who are interested in school safety through the lens of climate. And this is the group that are here, and you can see we represent a number of different disciplines, a number of different locations, and we've been meeting for 3 years talking about the research on it and practice, and we're very glad today to be able to talk about it not in a crisis. Yet we need to also remember that there are over 200,000 students that have survived school shootings, that have been in schools where the shootings occur, and they are still among us and with us, and we need to pay attention to that as well. We are partnering with a number of agencies that support professional organizations in the state, including ASA. And so I'd like to begin, why are we here today, and what is this word about building capacity? So I'd like to begin, Stephen Covey talks about beginning with the end in mind. And so I want to go with that because it's so important to keep students safe in schools. There's so many things that happen besides the ultimate active shooter. You can have bomb threats, you can have cocaine deals going on in your parking lot, all kinds of things that threaten the safety of students. Yet within, for about 7 years, since the safe and drug-free school money has gone away, we have not had any kind of state capacity building capacity in terms of prevention. So what can we do as concerned researchers and practitioners who see a great need in the state to build capacity to keep people informed on this issue? And we thought, well, what are our resources that we already have in the state of Arizona? And that comes to the organizations such as ASA, such as the School Service Workers Organization. So how can we harness the power of these professionals to move that information into a school to make a difference in school safety through climate? That's what we're doing is this School Safety and Climate Initiative. So here's how we would like to see it operate. We are talking to all of these professional organizations, such as ASA, giving them the same kind of information that we are giving here today. And what we would like to have at the end of each of the sessions is the participants will be asked to return to your home base and to contact your other professional colleagues about what are we doing in our school, in our district, to promote safety through climate. And that we form or repurpose a site-based school safety or climate group, perform a needs assessment of what's going on, and develop a plan to improve or enhance upon the safety in our school. That's an ongoing kind of activity. So that's the end in mind, is that with this year we've already met with the school psychologist, but we'll be meeting with all of these professional groups and providing some of the same information that we're providing for you today. We are also developing a website and some other kinds of information that you can use in this back at your site, at your district, in whatever to move forward. So that's why we're here today, and that's what we want to do. And our outcome again will be that we are going to have more schools thinking about climate and safety together, not just thinking about the ultimate active shooter training or those kinds of things, but we know from the history of, if we go back to the school shooting pieces, we know that most of the school shootings, Sandy Hook is a really big outlier on that, come from people who live in that school. And so the climate is very important. So we want to we're going to talk about a positive climate, climate and academics, climate safety, and then briefly the components of the school safety plan. Both Sarah and I serve on the ADE School Safety Task Force, so we can bring you some of that. And then how can we build capacity for a comprehensive plan? So that's our agenda. Sarah, I'll move that over to you.
Perfect. So I'm going to start with using the term school missions. So the National School Climate Center definition situates school climate as the quality and character of school life. So a little amorphous. I would say that school climate is kind of, you walk into a school and you can kind of sense there's this gestalt feeling of the school climate. But as a researcher and probably as someone who's the gestalt measure is probably not the most effective measure of school climate. So what else should we be considering sort of as we measure school climate? It's based on patterns of students, parents, and school personnel's experience, right? So multi sort of modal measure of school climate for all of the different stakeholders. And it reflects norms, goals, values, as well as some attitudes and beliefs, as well as interpersonal relationships, teaching and learning practices. So it's not exempt, it's not something that's outside necessarily of the classroom, and organizational structures, right? So there's a higher level, a higher infrastructure needed for school climate. Okay, so that's school climate. Now let's think about school safety, right? So what is school safety? Well, I think at a basal level and sort of at the level that the public understands, right? It's a school that's free from threats, violence, or other criminal behavior. But I think the growing national dialogue is emphasizing the connection between school physical safety, right? So that's school physical safety and student emotional safety, right? So I'm starting to hear sort of this dialogue, otherwise emotional safety is often called mental health, right? And so if we think about emotional safety, it's a space that allows staff, students, and the community to feel connected to the school and to be able to participate in its major functions, teaching and learning. And as this diagram suggests, there's an iterative, a back and forth relationship, right? So it's hard to be emotionally safe. We think of the movement for trauma-informed schools, right? So it's hard to perform academically if you are in a constant state of vigilance, right? As well as environments where they're not connected, where there aren't those norms of behavior and those relationships. Those are also more likely to be places where there's physical unsafety, right? Okay, we have these two different paradigms, which are talked about in siloed sort of entities, but there's a definite relationship. So let's combine them and let's be a little bit more specific than the National Center's definition when we think about school climate and have three component pieces. So school climate is a place where there's safety, and so that's both physical safety and emotional safety. It's a space that's positive, right? And so we can think about positive expectations, right? And so I know many schools across the state implement PBIS, right? So thinking about students knowing what they're supposed to do rather than what they are not supposed to do. Positive can also encompass that relational sense, right? So the connectedness between students and students, as well as students and staff. A component we haven't talked about, but is critically important, is that it's an just. So we know two things, both about safety as well as student connectedness, and that's that our non-majority students, our minority students, are more likely to have negative perceptions of their school environment, so they rate their school climate as being poorer. They're more likely to be, we know this, nationally disproportionately represented in discipline, so not necessarily the positive aspects. And they're more likely to be in schools or be victims of violence in schools, right? So experience sort of that physical unsafety. Okay. Oops. So then let's kind of more explicitly link this to academics, because we recognize that that's the ultimate goal of our schools.
Just very briefly, we have three major components for academic success. If you just want to look at the 30,000 level, you can have the best curriculum in the world and have people that are not skilled in instruction. And so that curriculum is not going to be effective. You can have the best instructors in the world with a weak curriculum, and you're not going to get the results of that. You can have the best curriculum, the best instructors, and kids are afraid to come to school. We know that about 10% nationally, kids are, every day, there are 10% of them who are afraid to come to school. They're not going to learn either. And so we need to balance out these three components. We can't really divorce climate from academics. We can't divorce climate from safety. And the people that keep these three balls together are the leadership. So we're going to move into talking a little bit more about safety.
And solutions. So let's talk about safety and solutions. So so in 2002, the Secret Service studied school shootings. So this was right after Columbine, right? So when we started sort of to pay attention to school shootings, they updated their report in 2019. And so let's learn from, or let's take away sort of the key lessons that they brought to us. And so while we may see in the media profiles a white loner male with access to weapons sort of as our school shooter, the report both in 2002 and 2019 identified a lack of an accurate profile for the type of school or the type of student that would experience a school shooting. So while we would love to say that we could pinpoint or identify a subgroup of students to pay attention to, that's not necessarily the case. They also found that while another solution might be to have law enforcement on campus, and Arizona actually has one of the preeminent sort of SRO training programs, that training program would be the first to say that while they support protection, the SROs have other sort of roles on campus. But in the events that they chronicled, most of attacks ended very quickly, and law enforcement didn't have the opportunity to intervene before there were casualties. So what they identified as the solution is to create and promote safe school climates. And to do this, they recognize the importance of comprehensive, multidisciplinary teams. So the link, and I understand these are going to be provided, so this is the link to the most recent sort of guide. Okay, so the Secret Service came out and said, okay, it's pretty hard to prevent school shootings from kind of a security standpoint. Let's contradict this with a whole host of literature over decades that has suggested that supporting student connectedness can improve both physical safety and emotional safety. So let's define connectedness. So connectedness is when you feel close to people at your school, when you're happy to be at your school, you feel you're a part of this school, feel they're treated fairly, so that just component, and you feel safe, right? So it brings in sort of all of the components of school climate. I'm going to show you some data from this very large scale study of over 90,000 students that have been followed into adulthood. And so what this study found, so let me orient you to this graph. This is your level of school connectedness. So these are students who say, I am not at all connected to my school. So to the other end of the spectrum, students who feel very connected. On here, our y-axis is the level of substance use, right? And so a higher bar indicates more substance use. And so you see this kind of step or graded relationship that students who are not at all connected report higher substance use compared to students who are very connected. Okay, same chart. Less violent or deviant behavior. You see the same pattern of results. Emotional distress or mental health indicators, again, the same pattern of results. So I would argue that we already kind of have the tools to promote physical and emotional safety, and that's by building connectedness. The good thing about this is, so around sort of the wheel are the different strategies that are evidence-based to promote connectedness. And I bet you're reading this thinking we already do these things, right? And so these things aren't things that we're trying new things that we're trying to get you to do. We're trying to have you see them in the light of being a tool to promote school safety and prioritize them in that realm. So meaningful participation, those high supported expectations, clear and consistent boundaries, so positive expectations, relationally based, show care and concern. We have a colleague, Cindy Rich, who's on our team. She always talks about an example where they put names of students on the wall on sticky notes and had teachers grab the ones that they said that they have a relationship with, and the students that were names that were left up there were ones that they actively, as a staff, intended to reach out to and build a relationship, right? So these very concrete ways of thinking through these things. And then teaching life skills. So I know there's a movement for more social emotional learning programs in schools, and that's something that has been shown to promote connectedness.
So when we're talking about school safety, often we go to the most extreme and talk about an incident with a shooter or a bomb threat or something like that. What we're talking about is a spectrum of resources. And this is a good time to be thinking about this spectrum because we don't have a crisis. We can start building these climates and assessing the climates. And so what we talk about in terms of prevention that reduces the likelihood that these things are going to happen. For example, a positively supported school climate, which may be an MTSS program, PBIS, restorative practices, so any class meetings, any of those things that many of you are already doing. Intervention looks like at risk factors or signs of problematic behavior. There are protocols on risk assessment. And right after Sandy Hook, ADE did a lot of threat assessment training. They now have about 25 people across the state that have been trained in threat assessment. So that this is Jim Lee's work at ADE. So if you're a small district or rural district or don't have someone on your staff that know about threat assessment, there's a resource that you can use in terms of that. But that is definitely also very much part of the Secret Service report. the link that we gave you is a very clear outline of what a threat assessment needs to be. And it's something that, that if you don't have the resources on your campus or in your district, again, ADE has done some work in that area. And response is effective response for when something happens, that you've had drills, there's an emergency response plan, there is an emergency preparedness. Those things also, there are also resources to provide you guidelines for that, and we'll talk about one of those guidelines now. So we're looking at what is a comprehensive school safety plan talk about? So there are four basic components, and again, we're talking at the 30,000 foot level. We need an infrastructure in our district. We need some prevention programs that really we're promoting prevention programs that foster the whole school climate. We need intervention and response. So we need to have a checklist for you all as leaders. How are we doing on each of those areas? It would be totally overwhelming if you had to start out and do the whole thing. And I'm sure each district, each school has components of it. But how do we get that to move to a comprehensive plan? So I'll just briefly go into infrastructure. You have access to the rest of these slides, and I know you have a meeting at 10:30 and we need a little passing time. So I'm just going to talk about the infrastructure because this is the piece that we often forget about in terms of how we create that. We ought to have two teams. We need to have some kind of team of threat assessment that has expertise in mental health and law enforcement on it. And that again may be at district level, you may be using ADE resources, but at the school level, a school safety team would be there that would meet regularly and talk about any kinds of threats and how to build that climate. We are data driven. We need to know how data comes internally from student surveys or staff surveys, externally from police reports or other kinds of things. Staff professional development. The staff needs to know what our emergency response plan is. They need to know something about bullying and probably about suicide. So those are the issues for staff planning. And then there's liaison. Who is it that you talk to in the community? Who is it that is there at the district? Many of you have districts with that kind of thing clearly laid out, but do you have a relationship with that person? Do you know who those people are and what kind of services they offer? So if you want to fast forward. So you can look at the prevention and the other pieces so we can move forward. And for the intervention, response, we've covered many of them. So a comprehensive plan is this infrastructure piece that we're talking about, that there is assess the climate from various perspectives, identify realistic goals, and keep in the idea of constant continual improvement by using data to move forward and to evaluate and assess how you're moving forward in this area. So you're always thinking about safety, but not in the terms of an emergency, and then we have to do something amazing or whatever, drastic and dramatic. So again, the end in mind is that this presentation and resources will be available to you as leaders, the school psychologists, the school social workers, school nurses, the SROs, will be throughout this year getting a similar kind of presentation and similar kind of resources. We're asking everyone to go back to the school, talk to the other professionals. What is it we're doing well? Because I'm sure that every one of you are doing something really super and wonderful. And what is it where are the gaps that we might need to look at and take these kinds of checklists and things like that to make an assessment. So thank you for your time. Sorry we're kind of rushed on this, but I hope the rest of your meeting goes very well. And if you have any questions, our information is on the PowerPoint. Thank you.
Well, thank you both so much. Such an important topic, and I know we're pressed for time, and you guys could easily spend a lot more time on that very important stuff. I believe Dr. Jordan started with the slides available, and their contact info's there for more information. If you haven't done so, don't forget to fill out your slip. If you want to win a great prize, I think Nicole's going to be collecting these, so fill it out right now, very quickly. And moving right along, we have just a little bit more here. Our fearless leader, Dr. Mark Jornstedt.
A few upcoming events here. As you see, there's quite a few of them. I'm just going to highlight a couple. January 24th, new and aspiring principals drive-in conference at the Chandler Center for the Arts. Then February 27th, aspiring principals. This is an additional one in Southern Arizona at Rio Rico High School. March 31st, Carolyn Warner's Women in Leadership Conference. So, and you got flyers for that handed out to you today. So please remember those. The employee discipline workshops, there's a couple of them coming up. Remember that it's hard to find teachers, so don't fire them, improve them. It works. Finally, division meetings immediately following this meeting. Oh, no, okay. They are in these rooms. Ed Services, room 346. Middle level division, room 331. Higher ed, 347. Secondary, 349. Elementary, 323. Higher ed, 347. Ed services, 346. Secondary, 349. Middle, 331. Elementary, 323. The presentation of school safety you just heard, we will have that PowerPoint available for you just in a couple of days, and we'll post it on the website. I want to thank our presenters, Scholastic, the NAU Civic Center, and of course, Dr. Bosworth and Dr. Lindstrom Johnson for presenting today. Thank you for attending, and off to the division meetings. I forgot to click save after I checked.
Yeah, I'm going to close it out. Yeah.
See, I thought it'd be fine with it.
I didn't think about it. So you used to work in Google Docs now? Everything just saves?
I have automatic save on everything in my,
Yeah.
on all my cards. Yeah. I thought you were telling me I have auto save.
Okay.
Yes, I did.
Good.
I was in this meeting yesterday. My daughter, my granddaughter, Hollywood is actually.
Well, yeah, I was there before when I came here. When I left, I was over in the Southern State, New York, Detroit, about. What was it? But the southern.
States I have not been in.
Well, no, you have.
I have to go to.
There you go. Yeah. Everybody, what do you have there? Your mom, she's in Arizona. Wow. It was like, how old was she? How old was she? Did she find out where she had followed? Went in? How long do you have to there? Your kids are
Okay, you guys, we're gonna get started. Try to. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Side of the room is ready to go. Side of the room is ready to go. The back, not so great. Anybody want to say hello and share any New Year's resolutions with the group? We're not going to go around and make everybody do it. That would take too long. But if anybody has anything they want to share, going once.
I'll give you a funny one.
Great.
So I read in a health magazine about this concept of dry January. So yeah, no, some people are like, what? Stop it. So I thought, I'll give that a try. But then I heard on the radio Thursday or Friday last week, they said, well, really, some health experts say it's okay, to have, men can have 2 glasses of wine a day or whatever, and they're actually healthier. So they suggested a damp January. So this weekend I went in dry today.
That's good. That's really good. You want to follow that?
I say get a bigger glass. Oh, yeah, they don't want to pull up the bottle.
I'm gonna duck in and out of a couple other ones. Where do you have me on the agenda?
Right.
11, good. I got a little bit of time. All right, okay.
Okay, well, if there isn't anybody else that wants to jump in, I'm Christy Sandvik from Buckeye Elementary School District. I know most of you, but in case there's someone in the audience that doesn't know who I am, I'm happy to be here. And with that, we're going to jump right into the agenda because it is pretty packed. So I'm going to invite Rebecca and Mark on up. They're going to give us a bit of a update on what's happening with our legislative issues. And as all of you know, it is opening day, so it's a perfect time for an update. So come on up, Mark and Rebecca.
Thank you. Do I need to use the mic?
I would
For the people on. Hello.
Right here.
Thanks. Nice to be with you this morning. As Dr. Sandvik said, it is opening day of the legislative session, which is always unique.
It just came out.
Which is always unique. It's like Curtis showed up. I didn't see you earlier. So session starts. There's going to be a very high volume of bills related to education this year. There's already about 300 bills that have been introduced. Probably 40 or 50 of those are education related. There'll be another 1,000 bills introduced. Probably end up with about 1,300 bills or something. Some large number. Just a there's a lot of bills, partly because our friend Representative Fillmore introduced 25 bills. We're hoping many of them grant a hearing. In fact, we're trying to work with the chairs of the committees, particularly Representative Udall, to kind of look at what we'll spend our time on. There's actually hearings that start this week on bills. They're trying to really push ahead with deadlines this session. The primary election is August 4th. So it's a very early primary. The past a long number of years ago, they moved the primary. So we want to get the session done so they can go out and start running for re-election. And so that's why we're into these timelines. As far as big issues, vape and e-cigarettes and the regulation of tobacco, we're going to see a number of proposals on them. Some they span a whole range, but a whole group of them are intended to make it harder for youth to obtain e-cigarettes. The federal government acted And the state still needs to act to create some sort of regulations and licensure for sellers of those types of things. Tax cuts, there's a proposal to reduce the property taxes on commercial businesses and then reduce some income taxes in a variety of areas. There's one big proposal coming out of the Senate. We're going to look closely at the property tax part of it, because what it does is it takes the assessment ratios down for commercial, and the way that typically works is it pushes the tax burden over. They say they address that by reducing the state equalization tax rate, that 45% tax rate. We'll look at that and see if it does it. I doubt it does it correctly, and so we may weigh in at the finance committee on that proposal. It may not be as popular, but we'll do it. What else? Education funding proposals. Brophy McGee has a bill that increases the education sales tax up to 1%. Looks like last year's bill. We're taking a look at that to see if it is exactly like last year's bill. We think it is. It's actually two bills, Senate Bill 1059, and then there will be an SCR companion bill. I think it came out already. It's SCR 1002. So we're taking a look at that. As for the budget, the budget last year, a couple of legislators held out their votes on the budget, protracted the session by a couple of weeks. We ended up basically, the legislature, the Senate, they worked through the Memorial Day weekend. I don't know if you're sympathetic to that or not, but they thought they'd be done. They actually, they're voting on the Saturday of Memorial Day. They don't want that to happen again, so they're trying to figure out a way around creating that sort of pressure and leverage. And so for the first time in many years, the legislature is going to have their own budget proposal, something I haven't seen in maybe 10 years. And that will be out at some point. And then the governor will come out with his budget proposal on Friday. So what we know about the two proposals, as far as district additional assistance, it looks, from what we hear, talking to people that know or claim to know, or some of them actually that work for these different branches of government, staff folks and others, they take district additional assistance and accelerate the full restoration to fiscal year 2021. So it'll be full restoration this year and cost them about $128 million on top of what was already in the baseline. There will be capital funding, building renewal, new construction money in we think both these budgets. How much we don't know. There was quite a bit in the budget passed last year in this area. And then school safety. The House and Senate claim that there's money for school safety in their budget. The governor's office, they kind of hinted there will be something in that area. I don't know if it continues on what they did last year, furthers it. We had the response for the SRO counselors program was overwhelming, and they were able to spread that money out, but the requests were three times the available funding. So there's something in that area we don't know specifically. And then we know that the governor's budget is going to have something on low-income schools. We've talked a lot about this so-called OPS proposal, where you provide additional funding to schools that educate low-income students based on free and reduced price numbers. There's going to be something that I will say where targets money to low-income schools. We don't know exactly how it does it. We had a conversation with some of the folks in the governor's office, and they say that they're structuring something that will try to provide funding to the most schools as possible at a fairly large dollar amount compared to what we've seen in some of the original OPS proposals. And some of the funding to OPS proposals was as low as maybe $35 or $50 up to $150. So maybe at the higher range there, the criteria they said they use a criteria to try to spread the money out to as many schools as possible. We'll know more later this week. Certainly by Friday, we'll have the details when the governor comes out with his budget recommendation. And then on to bills, whole bunch of bills, talked about a few of them. You're going to, we're starting to deal with them. The legislative committee will be seeing a number of these. We'll ask them to take positions on I don't know, maybe 30 bills on when we meet in a week.
Please.
At least 30 bills, if not more. That's just a large number. Happy to answer any questions.
School
Well-
Facilities Board, we're looking at, in Somerton, we have 2 new schools approved, and we did the drawings with minimum, every cost savings you can imagine. And the square footage was up almost 3 times. So the School Facilities Board is paying $111 per square foot, but the actual cost for just minimum standards with donated land is $285 to $290 per square foot. So any news on anything coming up with SFD and what they're gonna look at the square?
I don't, I know there will be a number of proposals related to School Facilities Board. I don't know if there'll be anything that touches on the, the square foot allowance or whatever that's called.
Cost per square foot.
Yeah, we don't know yet.
I don't know. I know there was a group that looked at the School Facilities Board, and they met early in the fall, and worked, the things that they were looking at were more like allowing school districts to understand where their project was in the approval process, because there seems to be, a lot of uncertainty in that, and things that happen, like you think you're on an agenda, but you end up not being. There's the prospects of creating some sort of system or allowing people access to a system that tracks where you are, but nothing on the score.
Now, when we talk about poverty students in poverty, the assessed value of those areas can't generate enough money to build a school. So SFB is really where we're supposed to work. But right now, SFB, their minimum guidelines cannot be funded in the amount of money they give. So the only schools that can build have to have their own money to come in with it. So that's when we talk about poverty, that's in capital, I'm thinking, well, there's the elephant in the room.
Roger.
Sylvia's tax bill 1059. Is it?
Kate's or Sylvia's?
They co-signed on it.
Pardon?
What was the
Good,
question?
bad, legs, no legs.
Oh.
She's planning to introduce it, I think, not next week, week after.
So I haven't looked closely enough at the SCR to see what it does to higher ed. So I think our first thing we would do is see where higher ed is on it, because she messed with some of their TRIF funding before. What it does to the classroom site fund, as far as I can tell, is it gets rid of the 40-40-20 breakdown and says it can go to that M&O list. It adds a few things on there like full day K, school safety, facilities, capital, and it leaves in a performance pay requirement but doesn't specify the amount. So that's what it does to the classroom site fund. So we'll be bringing that to the review group. We'll have a conversation with higher ed and comm colleges. As far as it having legs, I don't know.
I think it depends on a number of circumstances. I think they wanted to get something introduced early because there's another proposal that'll be introduced related to income tax using
The Red for Ed,
Yeah, the Red-
or the Invest in Ed.
Invest in Ed
Yeah.
proposal, I think will be introduced as legislation. And then I don't know that where the governor's office weighs in on this sort of thing. He's consistent in we have enough money. And so I don't know
And we're not
where,
raising taxes.
where he comes down on these. He doesn't, Sylvia's bill or Rocky McGee's bill, one of them needs the governor's signature, the other doesn't.
The governor's trying to pretty much eliminate income tax. I'm not sure how we get revenue for income tax fees, reducing it to zero. So.
Sunday's paper was all about how great the economy is in Arizona. I don't know if anyone else saw it. Okay.
Even my mother came over for dinner and said, we got $700 million to spend.
So glad she knows that.
Looking forward to working with you all for a session on these issues.
If you want to talk about sex ed, you can come to the Capitol tomorrow. That's right off the bat. Tomorrow there's a sex ed bill up, so.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you can raise your hand.
That's what I'll be doing tomorrow afternoon.
When is Senate and House Ed, so we just make sure
House Ed is Monday afternoon, Senate Ed is Tuesday afternoon. So tomorrow afternoon is the Sylvia Allen's got a couple bills. That'll be fun.
Is there any also update on, I think it was ASA, they were talking about the 20 by 20 and then the issue of the debt service, and how the school district's going to pick that up. One discussion on that.
Don't think they, yeah.
Does everyone know what Paul's talking about? It's not, I don't think anything's gonna happen. It was in the plan originally that when the bonds for the school facility board were paid off, that $50 million it was in the plan 3 years ago. It was approved by the legislature. I still think
Because again, we're talking rural, metropolitan, growing, that kind of stuff. It's going to be, this will just be, they pull it from Proposition 1 or wherever, Proposition 1, and we'll just have to attempt to make a difference. Close it out. Now, we've talked a lot about that in ASA, about supporting it. So, I mean, the issue of trying to get enough funding so that rural school districts can help them get the help they need. So it's not going anywhere. We'll just put stress on the districts. 2020 by 20 is not fully funded.
I mean, it would be better to leave it in school facilities board if you take care of things like Noah brought up. But
All right, thank you guys. Nice job as usual. Okay, so I don't really need this. So the next person that I want to introduce, I guess I do need this for anybody watching.
I think it uses a different microphone, so we'll up on the podium.
Forget it. No, I guess I don't need it. So Jeff Carew is a colleague of ours at Buckeye Elementary School District, and also ASBO has recently partnered with Forecast 5. I think many of you are familiar with Forecast 5, but if you aren't, Jeff's going to talk a little bit about Forecast 5 and just a few minutes with what Forecast 5 can offer you as a school district. And I can't say enough about you, Jeff, as a person and also a Forecast 5. So take it away.
Well, I appreciate that. And I appreciate the opportunity to do this. We've talked a couple of different things about what role. Is that better? Oh, am I on?
Live stream now.
Okay. What the role, some of the things that Forecast 5 can do for the state of Arizona. And I've met a number of you over the course of the last couple of years, and we have slowly but surely grown our impact on the state. But something happened at your fall conference last year that really has us interested and intrigued, and the work that we're doing with Buckeye Elementary is really moving that conversation forward. Before I get into that particular point, I did want to say that on Wednesday, we will be announcing with Arizona ASBO a strategic partnership that they are changing the name of the data project to IDEA. I think that calls for data in education analytics or something. It's a neat acronym. Anyways, that will be powered by Forecast 5. So everybody who participates in the IDEA program with Arizona ASBO will have access to both the enrollment tab as well as the financial tab of 5Sight. That's the data comparative analytics. So your districts, if you're in the IDEA program, will be able to compare your spending to every other district in Arizona. You'll be able to build peer groups. You'll be able to look at your enrollment and enrollment trends, really kind of break down that data. So that's a really exciting, it's taken a long time to get there. We really appreciate the support of Arizona ASBO, and we are really looking forward to growth in Arizona. The main reason for me to be in front of you today is to talk to you about some of the initiatives that I've heard about in the state, learned about in the state, and the things that as a company we still need to learn, because I'm very confident our technology connected to the work that you're doing as far as gaining revenue for the growth of students and so forth is a really good match. At your fall conference, I sat in a presentation that was delivered by a person from your Department of Ed, as well as an assistant administrator from one of the larger school districts. And they talked about the static file. And they continued to talk about the static file. And at the time, I had no idea what the static file was. And they continued to talk about building pivot tables in Excel in which to get the gold that exists in the static file. There's gold in the static file. You just need to build pivot tables. You just need to build pivot tables. And as I sat in that room, I'm like, who the hell here knows how to build a pivot table? Okay, so we got one. We got one. So when that conference ended, I called Buckeye Elementary, and within 10 minutes, we had the Buckeye Elementary static file. 10 minutes. Called Florence Unified. 5 minutes later, we had the static file. We started to study the work that goes on in Arizona. And as a company that does and deals with individual student data across the country, no other state has a file like the static file. And I do believe there's a significant opportunity for you to use that static file as a great measuring stick for what's going on in each one of your individual buildings, as well as what's going on with your individual student groups. So shortly after that conversation, I had a conversation with Mark regarding a proposed revenue component to the growth of individual students in Arizona. I believe the static file will be a measuring stick for that. The second thing I learned about from Dr. Carlson was Project Momentum and how that data could be used to support that work. And the one thing that I would ask in this opportunity, and then I'll turn it over to the next agenda item, is that as these things become clearer to you as leaders of your school district, if we could get that information on exactly what it is the Department of Ed will need to measure and to monitor the growth of each of these individual students, you're already doing the work in submitting your static file. And that static file stacked year over year over year is going to give you the opportunity to produce out exactly how each individual student, each student group at the building level, the ability to slice and dice the data that's delivered through the static file is so incredibly valuable. And looking at the work that we've done at Buckeye Elementary, we can slice and dice that data in a very, very efficient and effective manner. So my hope is that as these become clearer sources of revenue for each one of your individual school districts, that we can apply this technology to help you better monitor, to better measure, and better support that individual growth, whether it is with the state or however it needs to be done. We just want to be an active partner in that particular work. And that is all I have. Thank you.
Okay, so any questions for Jeff and Forecast 5 before Dr. Jornstad and I are going to talk a little bit about the National Superintendent Program. So Howard Carlson was going to join us, but he got pulled away to something that he needed to be at. So he couldn't join us. But if you recall, I think at the December meeting, we spoke a little bit about AASA's opportunity for the National Certification Program. So Mark and I are going to talk a little bit about this in more detail. So I'm going to turn it over to Mark, and I also can be here to answer any questions as well.
So as you know, AASA has been running a National Superintendent Certification Program. And I've been exploring with Amy Sickle, who runs it for ASA, and she was the AASA president. 14, 15, I think. Yeah, 14 and 15. Preceded Gail and some others. And we talked about a couple Arizona people have gone through it. Dan Streeter went through it. Lupita went through it. It's a very great program according to them, but the issue is you have to travel all over the country to participate in the program. So Gail Pletnick and I and Christy started talking about what if we could, how many superintendents in Arizona would we have to get to make it financially feasible to run this program as an Arizona cohort using the AASA trainers and the AASA curriculum? How could we run it in Arizona and make it especially inexpensive enough for Arizona school boards to invest in their leaders and provide this training. And then there would be minimal travel expenses for Arizona superintendents to get national superintendent certification. So here are the modules that AASA uses. Each of these is a full module developed by AASA based on the PESO standards. There's ethics and professional norms, equity, vision for leadership, board relations, communication, organizational culture, engagement, instructional leaders, school improvement, building a learning community, social, emotional, and academic learning, operations and management, advocacy, and then a culminating project that the participating superintendent puts it all together and does a culminating project related to a problem or some work area in your district that you want to solve or deal with. And I bet you didn't know that you were doing all these things all at the same, or you did know you were doing all these things. Have all those balls up in the air all at the same time, strolling around casually, just keeping them up in the air, relaxing, not taking any calls on the weekend. Okay. So this is based, as I said, in the Professional Standards for Educational Leaders, PESO as we call it. And you can see how it goes through. There's themes, essential questions with each one. These are modules that have been developed by AASA. Competencies are demonstrated. There's a seal of certification, little stamp then that's put right on your forehead so everybody knows then eventually that you are a nationally certified superintendent. Based on those standards, and then there's an LMS. This is face-to-face meetings, but then a lot of the work is done with the learning management system that AASA provides. Am I doing okay? You want to?
Great.
Okay.
I would just add, I think the biggest, if you're wondering, why would I do this? What am I going to get out of this that I haven't gotten out of something else? And it's really the networking and camaraderie that you get from superintendents or aspiring superintendents throughout the country. And so I think when Mark said, well, you have to travel, I wouldn't look at it that way. I think it's an opportunity to meet with colleagues across the country who have similar issues or maybe not similar issues. And you really do learn from the collaboration that you learn from.
If there's an Arizona cohort, will it be open nationally so other states will come here?
We would try to fill it first with Arizonans, and we figured that we could probably make this work with 20 to 25. If we can get 25 Arizonans, we wouldn't reach out. If we got 16 or 17, then we'd reach out to some surrounding states. But we would hold most of the sessions in Arizona, so they would then have to travel to Arizona. Jerry.
Mark, is a prerequisite for participation that a person is a sitting superintendent?
Yes.
They cannot be an aspiring.
It's not. This isn't about aspiring. This is you are already a superintendent.
Isn't there a cutoff of years of experience as well?
Nationally, they do that. We've kind of decided that we're not going to do that. Yeah, but we've really decided that learning doesn't stop after a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
I mean, frankly, after about 3 years in the superintendency, you figured out what you don't know. I mean, it takes that long to figure out what you don't know. That's when you realize there's that whole list of things in the first slide that you're supposed to be doing. Your first couple of years, you're just surviving.
But one of the competencies wasn't bluffing. I thought that should be good.
Yeah. That's a good point, yeah. Pretending that you know what you're doing, competency 1, yeah. Assuring people that you got it under control, competency 2.
I do think there's
Schmoozing the board, well, that was up there, board relations.
I do think there's opportunity to build in the fee structure in your contract too for under professional development. I think there's a slide that we'll get to that, but if you're curious on how to pay for it, there's strategy there too.
One of the things Gail and I have been working with Amy Sickle is putting a little cactus in each one of these modules as well, putting a little Arizona twist in to some of them, for example, because of the heavy charter presence in some of the leadership modules, and dealing with the charter issue is definitely part of the leadership. The Arizona legislature has its own uniqueness that, that special injection of desert craziness that exists in Arizona that would influence that. So we'll be working on those modules. Cost-wise, and this isn't final yet, but we are thinking about trying to get the costs to a point where the board, or you, but our idea is your board would pay $2,000. This would be a 2-year program. They would pay $2,000 each year for you to be in this program. And we feel that that's a reasonable amount. That's, in a way, that's like 2 national conferences, basically, where you might fly across the country and state. That's about what it would be. I think that's the next slide maybe talks about that. Oh, I wanted to point out that one of the things I discovered as a superintendent, once you become a superintendent, there's no really long-term methodical training that goes on. You go to conferences and you get, and I don't want to demean our own conferences that we offer. I think we offer some good training, but it's more of a little dose of this, a little dose of that. There's no systemic, long-term training where you really develop a deep approach, a systematic approach to learning, unless you're still working on your degree. And our feeling is that superintendents, the learning shouldn't stop when you become a superintendent. Especially as superintendents, we need that systematic, long-term development of leadership skills. That's what this would provide.
Well, and to that point, Mark, I think a lot of kind of consultant firms are trying to develop this problem of practice. So if you're keeping up with what's happening in this national arena, you'll see companies or, I don't know, business partners that will say, come join us. And you can join this arena of professionals and you can develop a problem of practice. And, that there's one arm of that. What separates AASA from that is the camaraderie, because that one-off, there's just that. But then this is based on professional standards. There's the whole curriculum, and it's proven. It's research-based. And you'll find if you're not sure about this, just talk to people who've graduated, and they'll give you testimony on what sets this apart from these just like little one-offs of, like I said, the problem of practice. And it sort of becomes this family of graduates. I think Lupita and Dan will tell you that. And it's a circle of trust then too that you can really depend on. And not to mention, like I said, the curriculum is really good. You'll really learn something. So
after we discussed this, and some of you are at the meeting where I very briefly introduced this at the winter conference in our meeting right before the holidays, I had 5 Arizona superintendents approach me right after that meeting initially and say, I want in on this. And that was just after a very brief introduction. So I'm really hoping we can get, and I think it would be ideal to have a mixture of superintendents who are early in their careers along with some who are maybe a little further along, because that would give a nice mixture of beginners with some more experienced superintendents. I just think it would be a very rich cohort. And then if we reached out to some other states, some of our surrounding states that we needed to add to the mix. Most of these meetings we're anticipating, and I think this next slide shows it. Go ahead, I saw you.
I think Pennsylvania has a certificate program.
They're the only, are they the only other ones?
The only one.
Yeah.
There's another state that's thinking of it through ASA. One other state, so Arizona would.
This is what we're looking at for a time frame.
It would be nice if Arizona could come up with, 20. I think we're looking at 20.
We're looking at starting roughly in October of 2020 and going through April of 2021. We'd probably have 6 2-day sessions. Right now, we're thinking that those would be face-to-face sessions. And then there'd be some online discussions and things that go on. Each participant would be assigned a mentor, a very experienced superintendent. And I've talked to a number of our experienced superintendents, some of whom are retired or just retiring, about taking an interest in this program. They would be compensated to mentor the superintendents and work with them. So you'd have that mentor superintendent as well. But I see this as a chance for really increasing, if you're a superintendent, increasing your capacity in a very systematic way, cultivating your own professional capacity for leadership.
Passing a sign-up list? Sorry, are you passing a list? Passing a list.
Passing around to email me. Just email me if you have an interest.
There's a question back here.
I have two questions. Okay, one, I want to make sure I'm recognizing the national program that you're talking about. Is this the one that has an East cohort and a West cohort?
Yes.
Yes.
And the East is in Alexandria, Virginia.
Yep,
right?
that's the one.
Okay, and then secondly, at the end of this, we would be considered national certified
Boards.
superintendent.
Yes.
So in a very complimentary way, I actually served in the East cohort in Alexandria, Virginia. And really what ASA does in these superintendent divisions, if there's a way we can just compact that into your framework, you're actually already doing what we experience. You're actually already performing this, for lack of a better way to put it. It's just a need for maybe some structure to say that it's a part of those 12 days. Because just sitting here from this meeting alone, prior to the superintendent's division, half of what we did on those 2 days were some of the things we did today. So, and I didn't want you to reinvent the wheel that you're already spinning.
Thank you.
You're the color of your tie.
Well, I mean, one thing I feel obligated to do when we have these division meetings and you come from all over the state to a meeting, I damn well better have some content. Excuse my language, but you know, if we're holding a meeting, there better be a reason to have a meeting, right? Otherwise you don't hold it. And there better be a learning experience in the meeting. That's the obligation of leadership. Anyway, but thank you, Arlene. Wow. So if you are interested in this, that's enough of the sales for us. You can contact me via email. Now we come to the Bastion of Courage Award.
Okay, so I'm going to ask the past president of the superintendent division and upcoming president of the ASA division, Donovan Lewis, to come up and assist me in
This subtle little
celebrating the
subtle thing.
Yeah, so we thought it would be fitting to pass the Bastion of Courage Award to, I don't know where he is. This is Mike. Okay, come on up, Mike.
Let's congratulate Mike Vincent from Flagstaff Unified. And let me tell you what's Gabe can't be here today. Gabe is passing his treasure from all that he's been going through in TUSD. God bless Gabe, and said he can't think of anybody better than somebody who has been dealing with the ransomware. Did we already forget about this? Can you imagine? So Mike, it is with great pleasure. You have to put it on. I know he's not a costume guy. He messes up his hair, but you have to put it on because it's real.
Yeah, so just for a photo.
Just for a photo.
And then we'll ask you to talk about your experience. Okay. You don't have to talk about
No,
your
you
experience.
have to put it back on. I'm not going
Well,
to.
photo hat on.
Christy, get there with her.
Okay.
All right, hold on.
Open up the
All
lid.
right, here we go. All right, on three. 1, 2, 3. There we go.
Okay.
Anyway, tell your story, and you get to keep this for a quarter, and then you forward it to the next superintendent who's going through. Great.
Well, son, thank you. It's quite an honor to receive this prestigious award from ASA Superintendent's Division. I'll wear it proudly every day until we get to pass it on to one of you at our next meeting. Mark and Donna and Christy just asked if I would share a little bit about my experiences, and I'll keep it really brief and keep our meeting moving. And I'll just start out by saying, becoming a member of the expanding club of schools and city and state governments and municipalities that have been attacked by ransomware really wasn't one of my professional goals this year.
Yeah.
I think it needs to go on the certification program.
Yeah.
Right.
But I will share that by going through that experience, I learned a lot about cybersecurity, but also most importantly, I learned a lot about the great team that I have at Flagstaff Unified School District. So just got a couple notes that I'll share. First, just tell you a little bit of information about our event in case you didn't hear about it on the news or newspapers or all that kind of stuff.
We just gossiped.
You just gossiped? Yeah, okay. So on Wednesday, September 4th, we had multiple staff members noticing issues, and they promptly reported to our technology services department. And during that investigation, we discovered that we had ransomware. And so we immediately formed an incident command team so we could work together to identify strategies for systems and device security. We needed to coordinate with the FBI on the forensic investigation, and we needed to plan communication with stakeholders. And to contain the spread of the ransomware, we made a quick decision within an hour of identification that we needed to disconnect our Wi-Fi and then our total internet connection. That we also needed to sever access to our HR and business services, which are stored externally at NAU for us. And then that we needed to disable any of our servers that had not yet been encrypted by the ransomware. So we kind of limped along the rest of that school day without those functions, and then I made the decision to cancel school on Thursday, and then again on Friday to allow us time to regain access to our servers that control systems such as security, student information, business, financial, transportation, meals, air quality, anything that all of it uses technology. And all of that was impacted when we had disabled that or had been locked out of it. We also, over the weekend, needed to scan, re-image, and install new security software on over 800 Windows desktop computers, teacher laptops, and student computers in labs at our 15 sites. So that we could return to school on Monday. If you're an Apple user, none of our Apple machines, so half of our technology environment was not impacted, but that doesn't mean that the next event couldn't impact your Apple technology. We could not have successfully opened our doors the next Monday without just amazing efforts by our technology team who worked throughout the weekend, around the clock, in consultation with our cybersecurity partners, High Tech and Cisco, countless administrators, teachers, staff, technology staff, volunteers from community partners like colleges, just city staff. We just had people step forward to help us out. While we were able to return to school on Monday, it wasn't over. I feel like I spent that next several weeks just consulting with our technology director, our incident command team, talking on the phone with Wes and John at the trust, working with our communications director to keep governing board staff, families, community, and media informed. September was kind of a blur. I don't remember really much else. A couple of takeaways I thought might be helpful to you if or when you find yourself dealing with a cyber attack. The first is that we were just inundated in those first days by solicitations from cybersecurity firms wanting to help and to sell you products and services. And board members, technology staff, all of us were receiving calls and emails from dozens of vendors. Wes and John at the trust provided great advice that we should keep our circle of friends small. We are fortunate to have previously forged strong relationships with Cisco and High Tech. We've suggested to the trust that they vet out some of the cybersecurity consultants to really help guide districts when you're in the middle of dealing with the event. A non-expected occurrence, We had Moody's Investor Services request updated about our ransomware attack. FUSD was fortunate. Our district voters approved the bond program in November of 2018, and we had worked with Moody's to have our credit rating updated prior to selling our first batch of bonds last May. So on day 3 of the event, my finance director and I completed an hour conference call with Moody's to update them about the impact of the ransomware attack. I went into the call really just wanting to drive everything back to 3 key points. One, that we had previously developed an emergency response plan for technology events, and we were able to use that plan. That we had our data technology systems stored in diverse ways. We had internal servers, we had things stored externally at NAU, and then lots of cloud-based services as well. So it really helped us to kind of mitigate the damage and data loss. And the third point was just that we had cybersecurity insurance to help manage the financial impact, or if we needed to pay ransom. Proud to say that we were able to retake control of our servers with fairly minimal data loss, and we did not pay ransom to these cyber criminals, but we did accrue costs totaling over $150,000 for consulting, staff overtime, and equipment, and we were able to submit all that to the trust with our insurance.
That's cheap.
Yeah.
By the way, did you receive a demand for
Well, you're bigger.
They just leave like a way to contact them because you're locked out and you're helpless, and we never did reach back out. But the trust said typically it's about $1 million per server is what the going rate is when people pay ransom. So we feel like we did come through fairly cheap in this event. Moody's, they actually circulated a report about our district's event to its investors, and I was relieved that they echoed the 3 points that I wanted them to take away. And they had the headline that said, "Strong leadership, prudent approach to cybersecurity, limit impact of ransomware, a credit positive."
Nice.
I framed it, gave it to my board members.
Good. Take that.
Yeah. Another just final takeaway is that this ransomware is really sophisticated and it adapts. They're always finding a new way to get around and mess things up. And then it just takes one click by an employee to let it into your system, and then it just kind of lurks around there in stealth mode, figures out how to optimally encrypt your systems before they demand anything. In addition to investing in updating your firewalls and your cybersecurity systems, also take time to invest in communication and training in the human firewall. For us, that's the 1,300 employees who need to learn to recognize phishing emails, report suspicious activity right away. They need to back up files regularly and maintain password complexity and security. Again, thanks for this great honor. And thank you. I heard from many of you during and after the event, so thank you for your support. And I don't know that I demonstrated any courage to really deserve this, but I was able to really trust and collaborate with the outstanding team like that. So anyway, don't hesitate to reach out if or when you're going to this event. You're not alone. I know others in this room are part of the club too. So anyway.
Well, thank you, Mike. I'm sure we don't want that. So, just a couple little things and then we'll be done. I know that Curtis had a quick announcement. You want to just put in there, Deb, or come on up?
Right from right here.
Either way.
So I laid I hope I got to everybody, a little form that says Summit 2020 is from School Connect. I know many of us in this room have already gone to the School Connect Summit in the past. It is going to be on January 28th from 8 to 1 at the GCU Arena. And there are typically over 1,000 education, business, faith, nonprofit, and community leaders there. It's a great connection every time I've been. I think this is the 4th year, might be the 3rd. I have picked up additional folks to support our school district. It's huge, bigger every year. So if you're interested, you can send me an email or you can just go online to schoolconnect.org and register for it. And it's a fabulous summit. This year, the main speaker is the guy that wrote Crucial Conversations, Joseph Rennie. And so please consider signing up if you haven't already.
Okay, so in case you guys didn't catch that, it's just a reminder on School Connect. And then I just wanted to put a plug in before I turn it over to Mark on the ASA elections for the Carolyn Warner Leadership. I know we talked about that earlier. It's on March 31st. And I know Donna and Mark kicked that off last year. It was really successful. And this year, I know Dr. Fran Perlman really well. She is going to be our one of our keynotes, I think. And so for the women in the group, if you have that open on your schedule, I just really encourage you to attend. She's phenomenal. She's internationally recognized, and you'll walk away with some really great knowledge, skills, dispositions to help you lead crucial conversations. And she's also all about self-care and things that I just can't speak highly enough of Dr. Fran. So make sure
and
you
related to
mark
that,
calendar.
you have a form that should be around. It's Women in Leadership Educational Service Awards at that conference. There's going to be 2 awards given for Women in Leadership Educational Service Awards. And 1 award is for a current female administrator in an Arizona public school district. And another award is for the current female leader in an educational organization. And this flyer tells you how to nominate a female leader in your school district, or to nominate a female leader in an educational organization that's not a school district. We welcome you to nominate by February 15th women leaders. Then you have another flyer along the pile of things you found at your, and that's for the Summit on School Safety, Security, and Trauma-Informed Practices. And that's being put on by ABEC, Maricopa County Sheriff's Office, ASA, and Grand Canyon. And that's a 2-day event, May 7th and 8th. The School Safety Summit, May 7th and 8th. And I think you might, the first day, May 7th, there'll be 4 keynoters in 4 areas. And one of the keynoters is Kurt Carpenter, who's the principal at Aztec High School in New Mexico, where they had a school shooting. And he's going to walk you through the day in the life of a superintendent when you have a shooting at your high school. I've heard him give that presentation, and it's sobering and powerful. And a couple things that they had done to prepare in advance that limited the tragic loss to the deaths were greatly limited by what they had done. And a couple lucky things that happened as well that you can learn from. And then we have some other, and then the second day of the conference is breakout sessions linked to the 4 keynotes of the first day. So you might find that to be a very valuable school safety conference, May 7th and 8th. Madam President?
I think the only thing left is, do you have anything to say about ASA elections coming up?
Let's see, we're looking for a few good leaders. We need a president of ASA. We need a president of the superintendents, president-elect of the superintendents division. Our president of the superintendents division next year is Paul Stanton. We need a president-elect for the year after. We need a president-elect for the year after of ASA. Our president of ASA for next year is Dr. Donna Lewis of Creighton, but we need the president-elect to follow her for the year after. So please be thinking about those positions and whether or not you would be interested in stepping forward. And we need on the executive board someone to consider being the secretary treasurer of the organization and serving on the executive board, or having someone in your district. That position does not have to be a superintendent. So maybe there's someone in your district who's qualified. Thank you for reminding me.
Absolutely.
Those elections take place The nominees will be put forward at our March meeting, and then the election's open for about 3 weeks in the middle and latter part of March. And remember, if you have not registered yet, ASA Conference, San Diego, that's about as close as it gets to Phoenix, and least expensive travel, 13th, 14th, and 15th, Valentine's Day weekend. If you are going on the 14th, Arizona and Texas are sponsoring the Southwest States reception. That's at 5:30 in the main conference hotel. And so it's a chance to meet with your colleagues and have a good time. And Jerry.
LovePublicEdAZ.org is our foundation. Don't forget, we're looking for a mass influx of contributors. You can contribute on our website. We're making progress. We really are. We're starting to influence some policy and get involved. So please, this is going to be our foundation and our voice at some point. We got a lot of retirees participating. So please look at that website. Consider donating on a regular basis. And we are growing that foundation to be a voice for